we definitely are the product of evolution. As if I say it in a non-scientific way, we are the descendants of the apes. But all our family members, like the gorillas, the chimpanzees, the whatever, they are still alive. They are still in the forest. They are still in the trees. Only we, from the same family tree, we came out. And here, anthropology says it was evolution, it was luck. And Erich von Däniken says, no, it was not evolution. It was made by an extraterrestrial species. So out from the tree of our family tree, they made an artificial mutation.
Welcome to Mind the Shift. My name is Anders Bolling. In this episode, you're in for a treat, dear audience, because my guest today is a living legend. Erich von Däniken, or Erich von Däniken if you pronounce it in English, is probably the one person in the world who over time has had the most profound impact when it comes to alternative theories about the origins of civilizations and also the origins of religions. I mean, alternative in comparison in relation to the textbook version, that is. His main contribution is the notion that there's been a very significant extraterrestrial influence on the evolution of humankind. And Erich von Däniken has written over 20 books which have sold tens of millions of copies worldwide, beginning with the now classic Chariots of the Gods from you can see it here, I think, from 1968, where he highlights many features and anomalies in ancient cultures and ancient texts that don't fit the standard history narrative, features and anomalies that have since then been repeated and corroborated by many other researchers. It's an immense honor and pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome, Erich von Däniken.
Thank you. It's an honor for me. Finally, I had never a chance to talk to Swedish people.
Okay, so it's a first then. There is always a first for everything.
Yes, that's good.
That's wonderful. I know you have recently returned from a trip to Egypt. Is that right?
Yes, I'm always returning from some trip.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I was
just wondering. I mean, you have been there so many times. You've written about Egypt so much. So, can you still find new evidence of your theories in this epicenter of human history?
This Egypt is a never-ending story. You know that the public don't hear what's going on. Archaeologists, brilliant men, they always discover new shafts, new rooms inside the Great Pyramid, and the public doesn't hear nothing. But I hear it. And from time to time, I go down there to verify it and to look at it with my own eyes. And it is very fascinating. Just a short story. Roughly 450 BC before Christ, the Greek historian Herodotus was in Egypt. And then he worked together with some priests along a long street, a long line. And Herodot writes in the second book of history, chapter 124, 141, 42, Herodot writes, the priest showed him 241 statues. And to every statue, the priest gave an explanation. And at the end of the working way, the priest said to Herodot, these 241 statues represent 11,340 years of history of Egypt. Hi. 11,340 years. According to our archaeology, Egypt's history starts roughly 3000 BC, but not 11,400. Now, Herodotus made this statement 2,500 years ago. So we have to count these 2,500 years to the 11,400. And roughly, we came to 14,000 years when the gods from the firmament were among the humans. And since that time, Herodotus right, they have not returned. So this is a statement in the book, a second book of history of Herodotus, which everyone can control.
And there are also other documents, of course, ancient texts like Ezekiel and Book of Enoch and some other places where you can find these kinds of information, isn't it?
This is endless. This is my special field of working. I know the old text. For example, there was one guy which we know in the Bible as the name of Abraham. And there is a text, an old text, with the title, the Abraham Apocryphic. No one knows this Abraham Apocryphic except maybe a few theologians. And there Abraham says he was sitting outside in his garden when two beings from the firmament, he does not say heaven, from the firmament descended. And he says, they did not breathe like humans. If they don't breathe like humans, so what are they? Not humans? These two beings tell to Abraham, if you wish, we take you up there and you can see your planet. And Abraham says, yes, they take him up. He doesn't say to a spaceship because he has not had the word of spaceship. He says to a city in the firmament. And up there he says, I wish to fall downwards to the planet Earth, the heavenly place on which we stood. Once the Earth was up, and then the Earth was down, and the stars were up, and then the stars were down. When you are in a mother spaceship around the Earth's orbit, the spaceship turns always around its own axis. By this, you create an artificial gravity. Now, nobody could have known this, but Abraham tells it thousands of years ago. The space, the place we were, once turned up and once turned down. Once I saw the Earth up, and then I saw the stars down.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fantastic, these texts. By the way, just to one which you cannot deny, there was another guy called Enoch who was taken up there too. He also learned the language of the extraterrestrials. And then one of his teachers, the astronomer, said to young Enoch, human, look out there. Do you see this little light out there? You humans, you call it moon. But the moon has no light by itself. The moon receives its light from the sun. And he explains to Enoch why sometimes the moon is full and half, etc. This is scientific information.
Yeah, a couple of thousand years before it was officially known.
Exactly.
Science.
That's the point. So you ask, what's going on? Who made this information? Who had that knowledge?
Yeah, that's fascinating. Everything is so fascinating. And beginning with this, as I said, this book, Chariots of the Gods. You've written so many books. I have only read this one, but I've heard you in so many interviews and on television, Gaia Television, and other programs. So I know something about what you're talking about. So let's just give a 30-second brief summary of what our school children are taught in school today, and then if you can just counter that and say what your version of what actually happened with human civilization after that. So the story our school children are told is that Homo sapiens lived through the Stone Age, and then there was more Stone Age, and then there was some more Stone Age, and then all of a sudden, around 10,000 years ago, we ascended to the Bronze Age and settled and learned agriculture, and 4,000 years later, advanced civilizations appeared simultaneously at different locations around the world. Very sudden. So what is your quick version of how our species evolved?
Well, a quick version is very hard because that's a whole story. Anyhow, we definitely are the product of evolution. As if I say it in a non-scientific way, we are the descendants of the apes. But all our family members, like the gorillas, the chimpanzees, the whatever, they are still alive. They are still in the forest. They are still in the trees. Only we, from the same family tree, we came out. And here, anthropology says it was evolution, it was luck. And Erich von Däniken says, no, it was not evolution. It was made by an extraterrestrial species. So out from the tree of our family tree, they made an artificial mutation. Simply compare it with an apple tree. We humans know the apple tree. Now scientists would like to find out what is the original apple tree. And they find it out. There was 100,000 years ago was an original apple tree. Okay, the apple tree grew out in evolution. But then we humans came and we changed something. Simply by grafting, we changed the apple. So we have involved in the evolution of the apple tree. So you do not contradict evolution, but there was something artificial. Now, all these are not my own ideas. I have these ideas all from the holy writings, including the Bible. Our children, they are told in the Bible there was a God, and God descended and he spoke to Moses and to the prophets, etc. Now, I am a deep believer in God. Still today, I am one of these humans who pray every day. But my God does not need a vehicle in which to move around from point A to point B. God is all over. Or my God is out of time. He is timeless. He did not make an experience, then he has to wait. What would the result be, etc. Now, if you read the Bible, God created humans according their own image. We are the copies of the gods. So this is not only Erich von Däniken's idea. You read this in the holy books, not only the Bible. The gods created humans according their own image. So we are the offsprings of somebody else, which does not contradict general evolution. We are part of evolution, but then comes an artificial mutation, and now we are a mixture between humans and extraterrestrials.
In your view, at what period of in time, when did this mutation, this meddling from extraterrestrials happen? Because I mean, Homo sapiens, as we know it today, is at least 200,000, maybe 300,000 years old. So when did this occur on that time scale? So
I really don't know. I think we have been visited not only one time by extraterrestrials, we have been visited at least 3 times. And the first visit was approximately 80 to 100,000 years in the past. And then they came again. And the last time, roughly 4,000 BC. But this is all guess. We have no proofs for it. You know, humanity has written all this down. Our forefathers, in every tribe, in every culture, in every city, they had thousands and thousands of books. It was all handed down. And then came the great flood and destroyed all the books. Not only thousands and 100,000 books, millions of books were destroyed. So all this story of the gods who made it, who created humans according to their own image, was handed down. Only about 2 or 3 books are left, and they have the religious, psychological explanation like our Bible.
Would you say that all the gods that are referred to in many religious traditions all over the world are actually referring to extraterrestrials, or are there? I mean, could there be any other explanations, more esoteric explanations, or do you believe that all of these references to what was called gods in the Mayans, the Incas, the Egyptians,
at least
everybody is this?
Yeah. Well, the Maya, definitely. The Maya says it themselves. I simply have to explain it. Look, every culture has a calendar. And the calendar, the starting point of a calendar, is something very important for the culture. We are Christians. We have a Christian calendar. The reason why we started the calendar was because the birth of Jesus Christ. The Muslim community has another calendar, the Muslim calendar. He started about 711 BC because Muhammad made his trip to Medina. Or the Jewish community has another calendar, starts with the creation of the world, roughly 3,500 BC. So the starting point of a calendar is something very important for every culture. Now the Maya had a starting point. It was August 11th, 3114 BC. What happened then? What was for the Maya so important? They say it. They have handed it down. There is 3 Maya books we have left. And in one of these Maya books, in the Chilambalam book, you can read, it was the day when the gods from the Milky Way descended. And when they return again, they will again make the order which they brought us to us. So the reason for the starting point of the Maya calendar, which was an extreme precise calendar, was the coming down of somebody from the Milky Way. That's handed down. Fourth Chilambalam book.
And is that also the start of the La Serpiente Emplumada, as they say?
Yes.
You know, the feathered serpent,
feathered
which
serpent.
was some kind of main god for those people. That was,
you know, the Maya,
kind of
they were living in the woods and in the jungle. They knew serpents. They knew that the serpent cannot fly. But why did they call it feathered serpent? Because it looked for them like something long which could fly. By the way, we even find the Valley of the King in Egypt, which is quite away from the Maya, from Central America, we find some flying feathered serpent on the wall.
Oh, really?
So they believed it was looking like a flying serpent. Now, the so-called gods, the extraterrestrial, they warned different priests or high priests of different cultures of a coming catastrophe. Remember the catastrophe of the great flood, the biblical story of Noah. So a God comes and warns Noah a gigantic flood would come. But this God was not an almighty God. He could not just snip his finger and say, here you have a ship. He says, no, you have to construct a ship. To construct a ship means you have to break arbors, trees. You have to cut trees. You have to make planes. You have to construct a ship. The construction of a ship needs at least 1 or 2 years. That means the so-called God, which warned the humans, knew at least 1 or 2 years ahead that the catastrophe was coming. Not just like a weather forecast today. Well, in 3 days it will rain. No, long time ahead, because you need long time ahead to construct the ship. And this story of the great flood and the ship is common to many cultures around the world. So they knew that the catastrophe was coming. And I think only extraterrestrials could have known that a catastrophe would come. Now, today, we know that the Earth is not the complete round ball. The Earth axis has this, and the Earth is somehow has 2 poles, the North Pole and the South Pole. And we know today that the magnetic field of the poles are changing. Scientists can measure this. The magnetic pole of our Earth is changing. Now, it might be that one day this whole thing turns, and it would be a catastrophe for our society. But only a high technological scientific society could know this in advance. We cannot calculate it. When will the Earth shift because of the magnetic pole? They knew it, which means they were much more advanced than us.
Yeah. I know that they are calculating this now when it comes to this thing about the magnetic poles shifting, but that's one thing. Another thing is the precession, as you know, that we know pretty exactly, don't we? I mean, that there's a roughly 25 or 26,000 year cycle when the tilting of the Earth changes, so to speak. So that's where we have eons and things. But this is another matter that you are talking about now, the magnetic shift.
Our great grand Sahara desert, the desert of Sahara, was once green. We definitely know this because we found animals and green stuff there. Now, a group of scientists from several universities, 3 years ago, they wanted to find out why was the Sahara at that time green, and then it changed to a desert again. So they made diggings into the earth of the Sahara, down every sheet for about 200,000 years. And they found out roughly every 21,000 years, the Sahara changed from green into desert. Now, at that time, there were no humans. We were not in charge of the climate change, but it changed. And they said exactly what you say. It had to do with the Earth axis, with this, we are not the complete ball, and the sun shines differently to different time, which changes the wind, and etc., etc. Yeah. So we can prove that we had catastrophes in the past.
Yeah.
Not only in a geological matter, we can prove it in history. Every great historian, Herodotus, Theodore, Plato, Strabo, they all write in their books there was a catastrophe, a global catastrophe some thousands of years ago.
Yeah, and this thing that you say about Sahara is also evidence that the Sphinx is much, much older than the textbooks say. Also, I think you've written about the Sphinx also.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, I'm just now reading Robert Schoch's book here, Forgotten Civilization, and he was the academic that concluded that the Sphinx must be much older because there is water weathering on the sides of the enclosure there, so it can't have been. It must have been built during a time period when there was a lot of rain.
And Robert Schoch, he knows his business. He's a doctor in geology.
Yeah.
He's a geologist. He knows how the stones and the earth and the desert looks.
Definitely. So now we know, as I mentioned before, that Homo sapiens is at least 200,000 years old, or maybe 300,000 years old. And I mean, notwithstanding what you say about evolution, that it's a strange thing that that the other big apes have not changed anything, but we have very much so. But still, 200,000 to 300,000 years could be a fairly long period of time to be able to develop civilizations. You might think. So, I mean, are extraterrestrials really necessary to explain the fact that there might have been advanced civilizations long before the textbooks say? If you see what I mean here.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
I have asked the same question to Professor Dr. Dutt. He's a professor in Indology of the Calcutta University. I have asked, is it necessarily to ask for extraterrestrials? Don't we have a normal human explanation? And he says, from the Hindu part, we have many old texts. And these old texts definitely speak of flying machines. The flying machines had names like Vimanas. There were different types of flying machines. Some flying machines with wheels, some flying machines which could go out to the space or to the moon, etc. And then he said, in the whole Hindu literature, and there's an amount of literature, and he's professor in Hindu literature, there is not one word, not one phrase of something of evolution of technology. So there was no industries. There was nothing which evolved flying machines. It was not the humans who created these flying machines, who learned how to fly during a long process of evolution of technology. These flying machines came from outside. They were here, definitely. And he said, simply because of this, it had to be a visit from extraterrestrials. And it was not the human evolution. You know, we often have here the story that maybe we humans, we had an ancient civilization long before. And you cannot completely exclude that. But every civilization, technological civilization, needs raw material. They need all kinds for their industry. You know, they need minerals, etc. Now, today, we found raw materials on the planet Earth, and all these deposits are full. Nobody stole it 1,000 or 10,000 years ago. And then we had these discussions. You know, some of the humans, the young ones, were taken away in the spaceships by these extraterrestrials. And these humans learned the language. And the humans asked them, where do you come from? And in every case, they said, from there and there. They even give the name of planets, which we can do nothing with. In none of the case, they said, we come out of time, or we come from another continent like Atlantis. They always said, we come from there. So we have no way. We have to accept extraterrestrials. And then coming back again to the story of God. I said in the beginning, my God does not need a vehicle in which to move from point A to point B. God is all over. Now just read the holy text. When Moses speaks to his so-called God in the Bible, before the God of the Bible descends on the holy mountain, he orders Moses that the Israelites should stay far away, not close to the mountain. They must stay far away. If they would be too close, they would be destroyed. So Moses gives orders that the Israelites are in a safe distance. And only then the Lord descends on the holy mountain with smoke, fire, trembling, loud noise. The whole mountain was glowing like a furnace, etc. So this all is natural. This is material. This is not esoteric. This is not some kind of human evolution. It was extraterrestrials.
Yeah, but you might say that it's esoteric in some extended way anyway, because I mean you mentioned God here, and you believe in God, and you can call it perhaps the source or universe or whatever. There are many words for this, many terms for what is the absolute, so to speak. But do you think that there is a purpose behind this? Because when you believe in God, you often believe that there is a purpose. And so all these extraterrestrial influences that we have had during our evolution, they were purposeful? There was a purpose behind all this?
Yeah, there's a purpose. In the beginning, no one knows how it started. Religion says in the beginning there was God. So we should ask, okay, what created God? We have no answer. Science says no, in the beginning was the Big Bang. started with the original atom. Where this original atom comes from, science or evolution or religion, we have no answer how it all started. And this is the moment where we have to say respectful with religion. It is a spirit which we call God. And I pray to this spirit. I call it the grand spirit of the universe. And the grand spirit of the universe is timeless. But there must be a beginning. We have no other explanation. Now, somehow, we don't know in the universe, a first intelligent form of life evolved. Maybe after millions of years, we have no idea. This first intelligent form of life had an interest to spread out themselves, like we did it in colonial times. We want to know, are there others out there? How is it in our planet? They want to know in the universe, are there others out there? They spread out. Now they know exactly spreading out in the universe with spaceships is an impossible thing. There are millions of stars and millions of planets who are like the one of them, Earth-like planets. But there are distances of light years. To travel there, it would take an eternity. So they chose another way. They said, we spread out our own form intelligence in another way. We infect a small part of our Milky Way with our own DNA. DNA is heat resistant. DNA is not disturbed by the high vacuum, etc. Like bacteria or like dust, they infect a certain section of their Milky Way with their own DNA. Of course, they know the biggest part of this DNA will come into the gravity of a sun, will be burned, destroyed, or other parts of the DNA will come to planets which are not, we have had not the possibility to grow evolution, too hot, too cold, too small, etc. A small part of it will fall down, come into the gravity of planets which are similar of the one who started that game. And now evolution starts. So, some thousands of years ago, we were visited by extraterrestrials, which was not coincidence. Our astronomers today, simply with our possible technological possibility, we know which stars have planets. We know which planets are similar to our Earth planets. It's not coincidence. The extraterrestrials, when they came here, it was not just they make a choice among billions of stars by coincidence they came here. No, they knew exactly only on that and that solar system evolution grew. So they came here and they realized this planet Earth is full of life, millions of forms of life. And one of the forms of life was the most advanced one, our apes. They took one exemplary of it, or two or three. They changed the DNA, planted into the womb, in the cell, and then the womb of a female of the same species. The female gives birth to a child. The child has definitely the evolution of the humans. We have the head, we have the chest, etc. But because of this artificial mutation, the child has something different, which the rest of the family tree has not. So it was not coincidence. It was made on purpose. And you ask at the beginning, what is the purpose of all this? What should we do? What is the purpose of us? The same thing. We humans, we have wars since thousands of years. We have all reason for stupidity. We are so stupid. We destroy our planet in different fields. We have to learn to be clear, not to fight wars again, to be respectful with our planet and all this. But at the end of this, we have to create new spaceships, big spaceships, mother spaceship, and we go out again like the others did. And we again are part of a snowball system. We infect again other solar systems. That's the purpose of this whole universal game.
Fantastic. I love that. And you might be right. Who knows? Maybe when we die someday, we will find out what's...
Yeah, really.
Anyway, you mentioned Atlantis. I'm just curious, what is your take on Atlantis? Did that continent exist and was it also affected? Well, apparently it was affected by extraterrestrial influence then, but did it exist and was Plato right?
Atlantis was a colony of the extraterrestrials.
Okay.
Definitely Atlantis did exist. The whole story of Atlantis comes from the Greek writer and philosopher Plato. I read the Atlantic stories many times, and these descriptions are so precise, so in detail. Atlantis definitely did exist, but Atlantis was a colony of extraterrestrials. It was Poseidon. He was one of the extraterrestrials who fell in love with the human girl, with the beautiful human girl, with Plato. And he wanted to live in peace with his family, not disturbed by the other extraterrestrials who still were on this planet. He was the one who founded Atlantis, that his family should be there in peace. And it was a technological society. But finally, Atlantis was destroyed. Maybe it was a war. We have no idea. That the other extraterrestrials were jealous or something. We don't know. But Atlantis, in my opinion, definitely did exist.
Okay. And have there been different types of human beings, different races of Homo sapiens, so to speak, over the millennia here? Because there are some remains that have been found that are very mysterious. For instance, these elongated skulls in Paracas in Peru, as you know, and there have also been some of those found around the Black Sea, for instance. And there are also skeletons of what seems to be giants. Do you think that there have been different, at some point there were different versions of this human species that the extraterrestrials tried to fabricate, so to speak?
Obviously, the extraterrestrials in the original, they have elongated heads. You find this in Egypt, for example. You see Osiris, who is the oldest Egyptian god. Osiris is the same thing as Orion in the stars. Isis, his wife, is the same thing as Sirius in the stars. Now, Osiris, now you see Egyptian engravings on temples. You see Osiris with his two children, and they are little children, just a few months old, and they already have this elongated head. So it was part of extraterrestrial. Later, the humans, they wanted to look like these extraterrestrials. Humans always copied. And now the humans found a method to take their children and to make elongated heads artificially by pressing the soft bones together. But in the beginning, the extraterrestrials had longer heads, definitely. Now you ask the question of race. Today, you are not allowed to speak about races. Our stupid society, they say there are no races. I'm sorry, there are different races together. A colored people is a wonderful personality, but he has another skin than a white person. Or the Asian people, they have different eyes than we have it. To deny that races do exist is totally unscientific. Races do exist, but we are all humans. We are all the human form of intelligence on this planet. Of course, we respect every culture. We work with every culture. We learn from every culture. We are humanity. If black or white or red, it doesn't matter. We are all the intelligent species on this planet. But to deny that races do exist is nonsense. Now we have no idea where these races from the beginning come from. Were there different extraterrestrials? Had they already different forms of eyes which were different, or skins? We have no answer to this.
It is a mystery, actually. I've been thinking about that a little bit, and I mean, there are some textbook explanations that humans were probably dark-skinned from the beginning, every one of us, and then those who moved northward, where there was less sun and colder climate, they got brighter skin and so on. But it doesn't really matter, because I mean, the Eskimos have very dark hair, for instance, and or Inuits. I mean, I'm sorry. and well, there are different kinds of anomalies here. I don't know.
Yeah, and it makes no sense. I mean, sometimes you say, okay, black people came to the north. Now they were 1,000 years in the north, and they became a white skin. But many of the white people went to the south too. They never became black. No, it's a question of the DNA of the race.
Yeah. When you check these arguments more closely, you can find that there are gaps in them, actually. So I guess, as far as I understand it, your main evidence or your main body of evidence for your theories, apart from perhaps what do I know, epiphanies that you have had personally, but in the concrete world are different types of documents and in ancient texts and ancient books and artifacts and artwork and all that, as far as I understand, that where you find references to what seems to be extraterrestrial influence. So what ancient documents, records, and artifacts should we pay especially much attention to in order to understand our history, would you say?
The problem with the old books is that they all are not original anymore. Take the Bible, the Old Testament, which everyone can read. Now, the Bible is a gigantic work what different authors have written to different times. Then they changed the writing again. They added something which was not in the original, and they left out original. It's all a mixture. It doesn't matter which old book you take. Go back to the oldest possible writings. In our day, these are the Sumerian cuneiform writings. Now, the problem is only the specialist can understand, can read these cuneiform writings. And of course, because you are a specialist, you grew up in your scientific community, you came to the same explanation which your professor told you before. Now, the problem is the spirit of time changes. You know, the spirit of time is what is reasonable. This is the spirit of time. Now, the spirit of time for our brilliant professors who translated the old books was it has to be explained with God. So when you read Old Testament text, somebody descended with smoke and fire, it has to be God. It was the spirit of time, the traduction. In the meantime, if we read the same text with our today's knowledge, we will translate it different. Take an example, you just mentioned it, Ezekiel. Ezekiel is part of the Old Testament. The prophet Ezekiel, everyone can control it. It's at the end of thing. And Ezekiel writes, he was out there near a river together with others, that the heavens opened, the firmament. Then he saw an object coming down. They were all afraid. They all fell down on their ground. Then Ezekiel, by his profession, was a priest, a high priest. In the beginning, he believed this must be God. So Ezekiel stood up to give honors to God. And then he realized this is not God. And then he described what he sees. Before him is a gigantic object. He calls it the splendorness of the highest. By the way, in German and English Bible, it's always translated the splendorness of God. Mm-hmm. In the original Ezekiel, the word God never appears. The splendorness of the highest. Ezekiel described the wings, the wheels, the noise, the legs, metallic legs. And he does not, like a vision, only see something. He hears something. He describes the noise with the thundering of a waterfall. Must have been terrible noise, etc. So they fell ground. Now we have this text of Ezekiel. The scholars have it and I have it. We both have the same Ezekiel, but we both come to complete different explanation. They look at it in a different point of view, with their spirit of time. I look at it with my point of view. So coming out from the same source, the same question, the same text, we have different answers. And it's again a question of the spirit of time of the future. Which question will be looked at more reasonable? Which question, which translation makes more sense? I have no doubt that we come to extraterrestrials.
Very, very wise. The spirit of time is a good concept, I think. So going back a little bit here, I know that when you were young, before you published this first book here, you were running a hotel in Switzerland. We don't have to go into that, but what was it back then that made you begin questioning the standard narrative about how human civilization began, and how did you muster the courage? Because I mean, it was pretty courageous, brave of you to write about these things 50 years ago.
You know, coming to the hotel, concerning my hotel career, we came out from a hotel family. So it was normal that after my high school, I went into the hotel business. Of course, I was a waiter, I was a clerk, I was at the reception desk, I was a barkeeper, I was everything at the hotel business. And it was a great time, a wonderful time. I never regret my time in the hotel. But now coming back, you ask, how did it all start?
Yeah.
I was educated as a strictly Catholic. And my father brought me into a Catholic boarding school led by Jesuits, Latin, Greek. And there we had to translate parts of the Bible from one language to the other. Now, and at that time, I was a fantastic believer in God, as I still am today. But as I said before, God had to have a few qualities. God would need no vehicle to move around, etc. Now we translated these texts from the Bible, and I realized that God in the Bible used a vehicle into which move around. And he did not know what was going on. He did not know the result of an experience. He was not out of time. So I simply had doubts in my own Catholic education. I said, what's that? This can't be true. And as a young man, I wanted to find out if other cultures in the past have similar stories or what other stories. So I read as a young man that the beginning of the world in the Sumerian cuneiform text, of course in translations in English and German and French, which I speak. And slowly you find out mostly all over the world, it's the same thing. These so-called gods have come down. They were teachers. They have come down from heaven. There was some discussions with them. The humans asked them, where do you come from? And they always pointed to the sky. We come from there. And by the way, in every case of this contact in the past, when these so-called gods disappeared, they promised to the humans, we will return. And this promise of return is part of every culture still today and every religion. I mean, we are grown up as Christian. We Christians, we believe that one day Jesus will return. But the Muslim society, they believe one day their Mahdi will return. The Jewish community, they believe one day their Messiah will return. So every community, big one or small one, they have the believing of return. And that was part of every culture since thousands of years. When Francisco Pizarro was the Spanish man who first came to South America, to today's Peru. When he came there, the natives believed that Francisco Pizarro is the long-awaited God who finally returned. They all fell down on their knees. The same thing with James Cook. James Cook was the British explorer of the South Sea. He explored Hawaii. The natives of Hawaii, they all fell down. They believe that finally the long-awaited God returned. The same thing in Central America. Hernando Cortes, he came together with the king of the Aztecs, Moctezuma, and even the king fell down on his knee, believed he is the long-awaited God. Yeah. So every culture from the deep past until today's our living religions, we know this expectation of returning of somebody. Now, honestly, not every religion can be right.
No.
Some of them must be wrong. I'm afraid they are all wrong. It is neither Jesus or Messiah or Mahdi or whatever who returns, simply the extraterrestrials. They promised it. And why should this take thousands of years ago? The distances in the universe are measured in light years. You cannot jump from one star to the next in just time like this. You need certain thousands of years before you can return.
Mm. Okay, we're looking forward to that.
I think they are here already. We are under observation.
Okay, yeah, I will come back to that question actually soon. Harry, we will. I think we have some more time. I have a few more questions. I hope I can ask them. I want to ask you a little bit about the intellectual and academic environment that was 50 years ago when you started writing about this, and how it is today. Because I mean, you were already then, of course, frustrated that these references that you found in different documents and artifacts to extraterrestrial influence were not taken seriously and they were disregarded. But for the most part, I would say that they're still not taken seriously and they are disregarded. Yeah. What forces are perpetuating this disregard, do you think?
You see, in the past, Chariots of the Gods, I have written roughly 6 years ago. When it comes on the market, I was completely crushed down by the whole scientific community. And I understand this because their spirit of time, extraterrestrials were nonsense. And even if you speculate they could exist, you would say, but they could never reach the distances. And even if they would never look like us. So the scientific community had reasonable arguments against my so-called silly idea of a visit of extraterrestrials. I fully understand this. And this is again the spirit of time. Today, the spirit of time changes slowly. There are quite some academics who have published their own books about these extraterrestrial questions, and they came to the same conclusion. I mean, some of them is an anthropologist, another of them is an engineer, space engineer, etc. And they question the same thing as I do, and from their point of view, they came to the same answer. So the situation changes slowly. The spirit of time changes.
Yeah, you can take Avi Loeb, for instance. Avi Loeb,
he's brilliant.
Israeli astronomer. He talks about these things.
He's brilliant. Harvard professor, Avi Loeb. You know, there was some years ago something flying in our solar system, which normal astronomers said it is a meteorite. And then Professor Dr. Avi Loeb from Harvard School calculated the time and the base that no, this can't be a meteorite. And he came to the conclusion it must have been an extraterrestrial object which entered into our solar system and left our solar systems again. But still, Professor Dr. Avi Loeb is an astronomer. Still, his own colleagues are fighting against him. The spirit of time is not easy to break. The spirit of time is something which changes slowly in a generation, 10, 20 years ago. You know, give me simply an example. You can cut it out. Take, for example, the Pope. The Pope is a respected figure, very high in the human society. And just imagine he would have a discussion with two extraterrestrials. And the next day, he goes to his office and he says to his bishops, yesterday, my friends, I talked to two extraterrestrials. His own colleagues would say, please, Holy Pope, Father, do not go too public with that because you would be ridiculed. They don't take it serious. The spirit of time does not permit something like this if the time is not ripe. And the time slowly changes and becomes ripe.
Yes, what do you make of these revelations from the Pentagon about verified UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena?
What they do is, again, just half of the truth. I have it on my desk. I have these papers on my desk. And in one of these papers, you have two pilots from the U.S. aircraft, Roosevelt, who started 11,000 meters high, two American pilots, and an extraterrestrial object just crossed between the two pilots, between the two. And then they give this down, hello, please come down to a landing immediately. So another thing is the scientific community, again, spirit of time. They say, yes, we have something out there. It must be a physical explanation someday. They don't come to the truth because this so-called physical explanation had some humans abducted. Definitely, we know it, and some implantates in the body of humans. Just physical anomalies do not capture humans and do not plant implantates. We have it to do with extraterrestrials. We are under observation, definitely, but the spirit of time does not permit them to accept this.
So one of your latest books is a sequel to this, Chariots of the Gods, and it has the title, The Gods Never Left Us. What does that refer to, speaking about what you just said?
Well, exactly to that. In the beginning, we were talking about evolution, and they said, we are half humans, human evolution, but we have extraterrestrial genes in us. Now, some of them have returned. Others have never left. You know, there was Dr. Chaim Eshed. He still is alive. He was for 20 years the boss of the Israeli Space Command for 20 years, Chaim Eshed. And he said a few years ago, extraterrestrials are among us. They could walk down the street. You would not realize that they are extraterrestrials. They are like we in our body. The ex-defense minister from Canada, Mr. Paul Hellyer, he's dead since a few years. He made the same comment. He said, extraterrestrials are among us. They are here. He even said there are some agreements with them. They help us to develop technology, and we permit them to study us. They need us for their own genetic evolution. So we have these things. They are among us, and I think they never left us. They were, some of them were always here.
They're walking around among us. 50 years ago, you were fairly optimistic about the development of continued exploration of space. Are you a bit disappointed with the lack of progress in that area?
Oh, definitely, yes. It always is politics. It's always the stupid politics, you know. We have a so-called political right and the political left wing. And mostly the political left wing, since it makes no sense to develop to space travel, to spend billions and billions into space. We better use this money for social things on our planet. We have enough planets on enough problems on our planet. So solve first the problems on our planet before we spend millions and millions for space. That's mostly the thing of the left wings. So it is always politically stopped. They don't want to spend money, and this is billions of dollars, because they think it's useless, it's for nothing. I understand this. You know, this is an opinion. I have not this opinion, but I fully understand it. They have another way of thinking than I have. By the way, the critics, that's some story. I have so much discussions with critics, and I love them. Whenever I ask them, which book have you read? They say none. And so why are you against it? Well, because extraterrestrials is nonsense. So finally, in a long discussion, if nobody bluffs and tells lies, and you let speak the other, finally, after a 2-hour discussion, everyone changed his mind. Oh, we didn't know that before. The situation changes.
That's wonderful. Erich von Däniken, where can people now look for your immense work? I mean, I will put some links
YouTube.
in the description, of course, but
YouTube, you know,
do they look for your name there? They search for your name on YouTube? And
yes, Erich von Däniken, you will find it. You know, in the meantime, I have published 45 books. You mentioned 25. 45 books.
Is it 45? I didn't realize there were so many.
I am 87 years old in the meantime, but the gods love me. My brain functions perfectly.
That's wonderful. I love it. Erich, it has been a true joy speaking with you today. Thank you for all the insights and knowledge that you have conveyed to the world, and good luck with whatever continued investigations that you do.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be on your channel. Thank you for the chance. Bye-bye.
If you like this video and other interviews and talks on Mind the Shift, please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate all the support. And you can follow Mind the Shift on Facebook and Instagram. And you can follow me, Anders Bolling, on all the main social media and also on medium.com. Thank you.